Welcome to my Tales of Crestoria Beginner's Guide. First off, I think we should probably talk about what Tales of Crestoria is. Tales of Crestoria is about Kanata Hyuga, who has to survive in a world where he's being outcast for committing a sin. A sin in the world of Tales of Crestoria is much heavier than in ours. Sins are punished by beings known as enforcers. After Kanata finds himself being hunted down by those enforcers, he meets Vicious, a mysterious man who allows him to wield his blood sin, which is basically a manifestation of his sin as a weapon. Kanata meets a lot of characters, both original to the game and many characters from other Tales of games. A lot of people aren't sure if they can just play Tales of Crestoria without any knowledge of the whole series, but don't worry. Tales of Crestoria has original backstories for each of the characters, so you don't really need to know what happens to them in their own games to enjoy it. Tales of Crestoria also uses a turn-based battle system, so knowing the ins and outs of battle is very important. So I think we should take a look at the overview for this guide. So we just talked about what Tales of Crestoria is, so let's look at the overview. First off, we're going to look at the characters and leveling up characters and many other things. Memoria Stones, which are very important and similar to equips from other games. Then we have team building, where we're going to go into the game and see what kind of teams work best. Then we have the subgrid, a very important thing for team building as well. Summoning, where we're just going to see how we get characters. Quests, there are many types of quests, so we should probably take a look at that as well. Guilds, a great way to help and get help from others in things like raids. Speaking of raids, we're also going to take a look at raids themselves and all the benefits it has, and lots of fun from there. Then we also have the training and of characters and Memoria. And we're also going to take a look at what new players should do first. Then we have general tips for players and ways to improve your teams even further once you've done all these things. Okay, so let's take a look at characters. Characters have different elements like earth, wind, water, fire, light, and dark. Neutral is usually just for bosses or something. This is basically rock, paper, scissors, or similar to the Pokemon triangle, not really triangle, like different weaknesses and different strengths. Like earth is strong against wind, wind is strong against water, water is strong against fire, and etc. The thing is that you should really be careful with light and dark, because they both are effective against each other. So if you bring light units against dark units, both are going to take effective damage, so you should really be careful, especially on raid bosses. Units also come in two different rarities, SSR and SR. The most important thing to know is that SSR characters have an over limit gauge. With the over limit gauge, they can use a mystic art, very powerful attack that can either do lots of damage, lots of hits, do support, heal, and many other things. Then we have different weapon types. Tales of Crestoria has a lot of different weapon types. Different characters use things like long swords, daggers, or some even use instruments or arts like magic. Okay, here are the icons and all the different weapon types there are. It's very important for different teams and different skills, because some skills only buff dual blades, some skills only buff axes, and it's very important, especially for the subgrid and for Memoria Stones, so we're just going to take a look at that later. Next up are the different roles that characters can take. Okay, here we have the different roles a unit can do. First off, we have the attacker, just general damage dealers. Defenders, the tanky tanks. Supporters that help other units do better at their roles. Healers that heal. Debuffers that debuff the enemy. Hit generators that just build up hits for the hit gauge. And all-rounders who do just a mix of some different roles and maybe even all. But it's really hard to put characters in a certain role sometimes. Okay, let's first take a look at the attacker. They're basically high damage output units, and they usually have low to medium hit counts. They're best used at the end of a team, so you can just take advantage of all the support, all the hit generation, and everything from every unit to just deal massive damage. And they usually just have high attack stats over everything else. They usually are, if they're just pure attack units, they might be a glass cannon, so they don't have a lot of HP and a lot of defense, but they have very high attack. Okay, so let's look at an attacker. I picked Velvet, the Wind Velvet. As you can see, she has very high attack at 3,990, and her defense is middling and her HP is not that high. She has also pretty low hit count, but as you can see, her attack on her second art, Hell's Claw for example, is 215%. And it's just a lot of damage, and Rising Falcon as well, but the hit count is not high. And her over limit lethal pain is just 450% attack. It's a ton of damage, and if you combine that with people like the debuffers or a Hitgen, she's just going to destroy with that mystic art, especially if it's on a raid boss and the raid gauge just breaks. So it's a critical, it does a ton of damage. Okay, then we have the defender, just tanky units with a lot of HP or a high defense stat. They focus on taking hits for units with low HP or low defense, like the attacker or maybe a supporter. And usually the damage output is obviously not the high because they focus on taking a lot of hits. Let's take a look at a defender. I picked Aegis. He basically is just very high HP, very high defense, and his attack is just middling. He has decent damage output and his arts are quite low cooldown, but what makes him shine really is his high HP and his high defense. He'll just soak up any damage. Next up we have the supporter. They focus on supporting units like the defender or the attacker by giving them buffs like more attack, more defense, more critical rate, and many other things. Let's take a look at one of these supporters I've been enjoying quite a lot lately. It's Christmas Mila. She is insane because she just has that increase of the crit rate of all allies, and she heals on her mystic art, so it's just a ton of support. It's great for all units, for hit gens, it's great for tanks because they get more HP, it's great for attackers of course because of the crit rate. It's just great. Also, she kind of has a bit of a hit gen in her with both her arts doing quite a lot of hits, so it's also very nice. Obviously focuses on healing. They have amazing synergy with defenders because they can just heal them up again and again, and because most units are not going to do as much damage as they can heal, so they can just probably turtle forever, and it's a very useful tactic for certain events. Obviously because they focus on healing, their damage output is going to be middling or pretty bad usually. And we're going to look at a character is pretty much just right now in the meta pretty much just defining healing. Yeah, some people who already play Crestoria probably already saw this coming. It's Estelle. Yeah, she just heals a ton, and her second art, first aid, just heals 55% of a unit. It's a lot. Obviously she doesn't really do a lot of damage, and her attack stat is quite low, but she has pretty good HP and defense. But what makes her really shine is her mystic art, Sacred Penance. It heals every ally at just 20% at the start, but if you awaken her, it's going to be 45%. And combined with the Memoria Stones she comes with, it's just a lot of healing. She's really annoying in modes like Arena, but she's very useful for things like events and raids. Focus on debuffing the enemy, and they allow attackers and do more damage and defenders to tank better because they debuff the enemy with different things like less attack or less defense. Debuffs like Weak also very helpful to go against units like Estelle, who we just looked at, because the debuff Weak just lowers the amount that the enemy heals, so it can be very useful for certain challenges or things like Arena. To represent the debuffers, I picked Ludger. Luker. He's a decent attacker, a decent not really a good defender actually, but he's definitely a very good debuffer. He debuffs the defense and attack with his different arts by the enemy, and it's very useful, and it helps units like the Dark Leon, for example, who's a pure attacker. Just helps him do a lot more damage. Then we have the hit generator, or Hitgen for short. Hitgens are very important for attackers because they help them get the hit counter up and do a lot more damage. And obviously higher hit counter equals higher damage. But let's take a look at why exactly Hitgens are so important. Hitgens are very important because they help the hit gauge go up. More hits equal more damage percentage, which is what an attacker really wants. Let's say you're on a raid boss. A raid boss has a break gauge. Once that break gauge breaks, every hit that you land becomes a critical hit. Combine that with the high attack and buffs from supporters and a good hit gen, the attacker at the end is going to be massive damage. Let's take a look at who I think when I think of a hit gen. Yuri. Yuri is insane as a hit gen. Just look at his mystic art. 38 hits. That is so many hits. That's some units do like 3 units can do most of the time, or even less. His Divine Wolf also has 14 hits, and a Shining Fang Job also has 8 hits, so that's a lot of hits you can do in just one turn. He also has kind of a bit of a defender because his defense is pretty good, but he definitely is made for the role as a hit gen, so you probably want him to be on the second or maybe even first slot of your team. And then for last we have the Allrounder, which I'm kind of cheating with this, but there's a lot of characters in Crestoria that have different arts for different roles, and they pretty much are good at a lot of things, but they don't excel at a certain thing, but they're not really that bad in most things either. They're a mix of pretty much different roles, and they're just pretty good for everything. I think the Wind Story is a pretty great all-rounder. As you can see, he has kind of a hit gen thing, he kind of has a supporter thing with the wildfire, he kind of has a tank thing with his 3400 defense and his decent HP, but his attack is also not that bad, and his arts and do a lot of damage. Especially if you max limit break him, he gives 20% to wind allies, so that's really useful. Okay, so now that we looked at the different roles that units can do, I think we should take a look at just some team building. Let's take this team for example. Let's take it out completely. Should have probably done that beforehand, but that's fine. Okay. We have the Memoria Stones. Let's take those out too. Okay. So let's say we want a nerf team. So what do we want first? I would say for my available characters, I would probably just say Chris and Mila. She has all those great hit generation buffs. She has the healing and the supporting mystic art. So we should put her in the first slot. Then I would do another Hitgen, which is Yuri. Yuri obviously has that Savage Wolf Fury with 30 hits, Shining Fang Drop with 8 hits, and Divine Wolf with 14 hits. Then on the third slot, I would either put... oh, not use all those. I would either put Edna or Lloyd. But in my case, I'm going to put Lloyd because he's max limit broken and he's a defender, but he's pretty good as a hit gen as well. And then as the finish, we are going to take Cress. Cress does pretty good damage and also a good amount of hits. Okay, so now we have two sub members. Those are the members that are going to switch in once one of these units goes down. Most of the time, you just want to put any other good units that you have. In my case, it would probably be Edna or any other unit. But because my units are maxed out, I'll put different characters in there. So if you're new, just put on your best characters that you have. But if you already have your characters leveled up, I would definitely focus on this. I would look at characters like Rokuro, because he gives everyone on the team 20% attack at 20 hits. Let's put him in. And then we also could take Malik because he has the same. So when we have 20 hits, we get... thanks Malik. We get 40% attack just from having 20 hits. And with Mila and Yuri and Lloyd, we have quite a lot of hits. So let's take a look at Memoria Stones. Memoria Stones is a bit hard to say, but usually you just want high stats and a good effect. For Crystal Vila, pretty much the best stone is this one, because it helps her over limit gauge, and she gets 21 points each turn, so I just equip that. For Yuri, because he's a hit gen, we just want basically just survivability and decent damage also. So let's just take... also try to use this one, but it does not have much. Let's just take... still have to filter? No, I don't. Let's just take a good one. You could take... take this one. It's plus 9 HP, and it has decent... Oh no, it's the wrong one, no. This one. Okay, I was wondering why. Okay. For Lloyd, we're going to take the Ferrostone. Find it for the crit rate. For Cress, we definitely want something to buff his critical damage or his damage overall. This is a very good one. Because the two sub members I have just are fodder, so I can just basically give them random ones because they're not going to be really used in battle that much. Yeah, let's just give them this one. Okay, this is basically a good and well balanced team. Maybe it's a bit on the low on the damage side because Yuri and Lloyd both are kind of tanky units and also have Hitgen and stuff. I also have a well balanced dark team also. Now some people are going to ask themselves, why is Christmas Melee here? But that's because she's a supporter. She heals and gives crits and gives good hits. Also important to know is that this is a dark team. So if I go against a light unit, then they're going to take a lot of damage. So having a non-dark unit on a dark team is pretty useful. Then we have Lutger here, he's a debuffer. Then we have New Year's Luke here, which is kind of an attacker, supporter, debuffer guy. And then we have Leon, which is just pure attacker. These two units on the back just do different buffs for the team, like Emil. And Elise. Now we have Memoria Stones. Memoria Stones are kind of like equipment for units because you put them on a character. It grants them different skills or buffs, and it also gives them the stats. So it's very important that you have good Memoria Stones. You get Memoria Stones from summoning or even events. Important to know is that when you summon for Memoria Stones, not characters. So if you get a certain Memoria Stone for the first time, you get the character as well. Memoria Stones come in many different rarities, elements, and even types, just like characters. It's important to know that certain Memoria Stones, like let's say a SSR one, it has a higher level cap, and it has obviously better stats and better skills. If you equip a SSR rarity stone and it's fire, and let's say it's sword, on a sword fire unit, it'll get the character is going to get a higher stat buff. So let's look at a Memoria Stone, for example. I picked Leon, the dark one. It has 7,400 HP, 2,040 attack, and 720 defense. The Memoria skill is 20% crit rate to dual blade type allies. It says allies, but very important to know is that only the unit has the Memoria Stone equipped gets the buff. So let's say Leon has this equipped, then only Leon gets 20% crit buff, not the whole team, even though it says allies. It's very important. So let's take a look at the Subgrid. The Subgrid is basically 9 slots of different Memoria Stones that you can equip onto it. In this picture you can see that it has different elements and different types. Please don't do it like that. It's very important that you have the same weapon type element on every Memoria. So let's say a whole sword grid or a whole dual blade grid. Same element is not that important because it's hard to have a lot of good Memoria of a certain type and even element. So just focus on a certain weapon type now. Okay, here we have two examples for a subgrid. The first one is a sword grid with mainly event Memoria, and it's pretty balanced. It has high HP, high attack, and high defense. This is a pretty easy grid for most players, even starting players to get. It's very important that it's all sword because it gives 9 times the bonus. And on the bottom we have a high investment dual blade grid. It took a lot of time to grind those stones up from raids, so it's very time consuming, but the higher damage is very useful. But as you can see, it's only really attack focused, and the defense and HP are a lot lower, so just try to focus on something like a sword grid. Okay, let's take a look at summoning. Like I said already, you summon 4 Memoria Stones, and the first time you summon a certain Memoria Stone, you get the character. You can either summon with different tickets or Gleam Stones. Now, there are many different types of tickets in the game, and many different types of banners as well. There is the normal ticket, which is just basically a summon with certain characters you can get from there. Nothing's guaranteed. Well, it's only guaranteed that you get a R stone at least. Then there are S plus SR plus tickets, which guarantees you a SR character or higher, and then there's also obviously SSR tickets where you guarantee to get an SSR unit. Okay, so here we have 3 different types of banners. We have the Crestoria summons, which are basically just normal summons with, I think, just the launch characters on there. Then we have EX summons. EX summons are very special because the characters that are on there are only available in EX summons. So if you have a certain one, let's say Leon, you cannot pull him from the general pool of summons. So if you summoned on the Crestoria thing, obviously you would get him because it's the base banner, but let's say a banner that came out after he released, you will not get him. You will only get him on EX summon banners. So those are pretty much the hardest units to get in the game. Then we have premium summons with new characters and characters with different outfits. On the picture we can see New Year's Luke and New Year's Chariot. Those are 2 seasonal units. What's great about Crestoria is that the seasonal units are always in the general pool, so you can always pull them. Tales of Crestoria has 4 types of different quest modes in the game. First, there's story quests, which basically just tell the story of the game. There's limited quests or events, where you have different challenges or many other things to do, but they're time limited. The power-up quests, which are focused on leveling up characters and getting them at higher level or higher ascension. And then we also have gold quests. Gold is very important in Crestoria, and we will see why in a bit. First up we have the story quests. They're basically just pretty easy quests where you have to beat a couple enemies to progress, and you can just enjoy the story through there. We have the limited time quests. They're basically challenges or different events or story quests, or maybe for celebration like we have right now, there's just a special quest. Just the only thing that you have to keep in mind is that these are time limited, so if they're gone, they're probably gone for a while until they're going to get rerun. We have power-up quests. They're basically just quests where you collect items to level up your characters and Memoria. Very important to know is that each quest has a different type, so in case you just want fire, level items, or wind, you have to keep in mind that they are on the schedule. So Monday has fire, earth, and light, for example. The only day where you have all the elements is on Sunday, so you can grind everything on Sunday, but otherwise you have to know which event is there. And the last quest type we have are gold quests. Gold quests are very important, especially later on when you're going to be using a lot of gold on Ascension for characters, you basically just run the stage and get tons of gold that you use for all kind of things. Now we have guilds. Joining a guild has many benefits like the guild boosts, the ability to use the guild point summon, and the ability to cooperate in guild events. There's certain events where you get rewards depending on how many points every member in the guild got, so that's very important to have. When you join a guild, you should totally make sure to donate items in gold daily. It'll help everyone in the guild by leveling up the guild, allowing more members, and allowing the guild captain to buy guild boosts. Raids are very important in Crestoria. When you do raids, you get certain things like Ascension materials or even Memoria Stones. When you fight a raid boss, you get points depending on how much damage you do to the raid boss. There are multiple rewards you can get from doing the raid boss, like the MVP reward for the highest contribution, the runner-up reward for the second highest, the final blow reward, and the final reward. So if you're the one who started the raid, you get an extra item as well. Now that we looked at different characters and roles and even raids, I think we should take a look at how we can make characters even stronger. We should focus on collecting Ascension items, collecting gold, and collecting items to level up characters and Memoria Stones. One thing you should also try to do once you're stronger is clear the assault raids for Ascension board materials, which we're going to talk about in a bit. So you have characters that take different things like elixirs, for example, to level up, but to raise the level cap of a character from, let's say, 50 to 60 to 70 to 80 to 90, and then the max is level 100 for SSR characters and SR characters too, you have to collect different Ascension items. On the picture we can see different items that you can get from raids. I already mentioned the Ascension board, but once the character reaches level 100, they unlock the Ascension board. The Ascension board has a lot of very great buffs, like more over limit gauge you get from attacking, or you're strong against a certain element, you get extra evade percent, or just general more crit damage or anything. It's really useful. So we looked at ascending characters, but we can also awaken them. Awakening with characters is usually done through just adding a certain Memoria Stone. Let's say we have Crest on the picture here. We pull a Crest and we also get a Memoria Stone with him. So if you pull another Crest, we can just feed both of those Memoria Stones into him and we get 2 out of 5 levels. Once you reach level 5, you get a very powerful awakening skill, you get a lot of stats, and you level up your mystic arts to get more hits or higher damage. Now that we looked at characters, let's also look at Memoria Stones. You level up Memoria Stones with Memoria XP Stones that you get from pop quests, but you have to see, because Memoria Stones only have a certain level cap at the start. There's some that start at, like, I think 30 if I'm correct, or 50 I think. And if you use duplicate Memoria Stones, they increase in level and the Memoria skill also gets better. So once you level up your Memoria Stone fully, you can also adorn them. You can add certain stones for attack, HP, and defense to get an even higher stat boost. Different Memoria Stones have different caps for certain things, so you can't just pump in and just attack Memoria Stones or defense ones. So every Memoria Stone has a certain cap, but it adds a lot of extra stat buffs. So now that we look at everything, what should a new player focus on first? Well, my personal opinion is that you should definitely focus on leveling up and ascending SSR characters. SSR characters are the most valuable. SR characters are usually good for their awakened skills, but SSR characters are much more important. Then I also would focus on ascending and leveling up Memoria Stones to get as many stats and buffs as possible. And lastly, also try to build teams with a lot of synergy with Hitgen, supporter, and debuffer and damage dealer, for example, or healer in there as well. Now let's talk about some general tips that I would give somebody that has been playing Crestoria for a couple days or weeks. I would definitely play Crestoria on PC with BlueStacks, or I think Nox Player is also a pretty good one. It runs a lot smoother, and on my phone personally, I have a OnePlus 7 Pro. It does not run as good as on PC, and it eats my battery so quickly. So if you have the possibility, please play on BlueStacks. Also, of course, be sure to clear out those daily quests, because it's extra stuff that you get, and why just waste that? I would also definitely recommend buying the daily gel packs from the exchange shop, the Gleamstone one, because it gives you a lot more stamina, so you're always ready to grind as much as you can. Also, try to find a guild. The benefits are really big and helps you a lot with clearing raids and many other things. Even if you're at a low arena level, at least try to do the 40 matches, because the Gleamstones that you get and the arena medals are very, very important. If you have any leftover SSR stones or SR stones with bad skills, use them to awaken the characters, because the extra stats and the possible fully awakened skill that you can get is very useful for any other character that you have. So what would I even recommend people that have done everything that I listed here? I would definitely start working on a very strong subgrid, because it does really help your team as a whole, because the extra damage that you get from the huge attack buff is very, very big, and it helps clearing raids a lot faster and doing a lot of damage in things like arena or events. Then I would also very much focus on clearing and just filling out the whole ascension board that you have on your level 100 units, because the buffs you can get from that are very, very high. And with that, we already finished with our beginner's guide. I would definitely like to thank the Tales of Crestoria Wiki for providing the images and the great title cards for the characters, because it helps a lot, and it was a huge help collecting all the assets and things for this. So definitely check out the wiki, and definitely join the Discord if you have more questions and need more help. Oh, and I would also definitely like to thank you for watching. This has been my first bigger project like this, because it took quite a lot of effort and stuff, and I'm not really that great with video editing yet, so if it's kind of a bit rough, I'm really sorry, and I hope I can improve in the future. Definitely check out my Twitter, Twitch, and Discord if you want more Crestoria content, or even for other games. And I definitely hope that I helped you with learning a bit more about Crestoria. If you have any more questions, or you want me to cover a certain thing where you need more help, please let me know in the comments. And I definitely hope that you enjoy playing Crestoria. Welcome.